Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith Rule, and welcome back to the Disney Debate 2.0, our revival of the Disney Debate series. I am here with my good friend Y2Staller. How's it going?
Going pretty well.
And we just saw a film. It's called Westward Ho, the Wagons. Now, going through the 50s lineup, I could tell I knew less of the stuff than going through the 40s with Cat, where, you can definitely pick and see, okay, I've heard of this live-action stuff because it was famous for this, or I've heard of this animated business here. Going through the 50s is kind of like going through a wasteland, because a lot of it I do not know. And Westward Ho is one of those films where I thought it was going to be a documentary. From that title, Westward Ho, the Wagons. Oregon Trail stuff was big back then. But it wasn't a documentary, and before we even begin, I have to say, I'm disappointed. No one got dysentery and died on the Oregon Trail. That game lied to me, damn it.
Well, yes and no, because, people did die from disease, but that's beside the point of this film. Even though, at first, when I was looking at it, and I remember reading up, doing some research for it, that there was actually songs in this movie, I thought, oh, it's Oregon Trail the musical.
And there is music in it, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. There isn't much, which I found both a blessing and a curse in a way. But the first thing to note about this, before we even begin to talk about the film, it wasn't quite as hard to find as I thought it would be. But the copy that we found must have been from some old VHS, because it's not the best quality.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was watching it. I'm just like, especially with a lot of the day for night shots that they were doing with where they're running around in the dark, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, I doubt I could find a better quality version of this film, because I don't think Disney even remembers that this exists.
It's like it's something from the Disney vaults that was so buried back there in the pile, and they didn't realize that they actually still have it.
The best way I think we can describe this film, and we talked about this a little bit before recording, this is basically a sequel to Davy Crockett, but without actually acknowledging Davy Crockett's existence.
Well, it does use some of the same actors, and a lot of Disney films, especially in like the 50s and the 60s, tend to use a lot of the same actors for different things, and they mix it up. It's still with different roles, but use the same actors. This is one of them, because it uses Fess Parker, who's been in the Davy Crockett films, and he's the main character in this film too. Almost kind of typecasting him, because he's always in these like frontier films, going out, out in the West, the whole westward expansion, I guess.
He definitely was. Fess Parker was kind of an icon back then,
yeah.
And I can see why in some senses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've said before that I like Fess Parker, but I don't think he's the best actor, and that's maybe not quite accurate. He's a great voice actor.
Yeah.
He has great voice acting. He has great presence. He's not a good physical actor. He looks the part, but he's always squinting. He's always making this face, except for when he's singing the songs, and he does a great job.
Yeah, he does. Like he does have that. He does have that soothing voice, and that does work a lot, especially with voice acting. And I like just hearing him talk about it. Like I was like, throughout much of this film, I'm listening to him speaking, and like it didn't matter to me much of what he was saying. To me, it still kind of felt like he was still playing Davy Crockett a little bit, but it still kind of it sounded the same, but instead of him being a frontiersman, he's like a doctor. But he's
well, yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
Now, his character in this film is kind of loosely defined.
Yeah.
In Davy Crockett, you could clearly tell what he was. He was an adventurer. He was that type of go-getter. He was out to do something, to prove something. He did everything.
Mm-hmm.
Here, they don't even mention that fact that he's a doctor until like the last third of the film.
They kind of mention that pretty early on. Like they mention, like I think they mention it at the part where when they're trying to load up the wagons, where they're trying to move to like higher ground to get a better vantage point against the incoming Pawnee, and they're going through all the stuff that they think they don't need, they could just leave behind, and he picks up these pile of books, and some of them were medical books for like medicine.
I was wondering what those books were. See, I was paying attention, I swear, but at the same time, it is glossed over. I mean, I guess you could call it subtle, but the fact that he's a doctor doesn't really define him is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, they don't really show him, him being a doctor so much per se. I mean, they do say doc a lot, but and I guess that to me that's kind of the assumption that he's the doctor. So from there I kind of gathered that he was a doctor of some kind, but you don't really see him do any like actual medical work, not until of course the last third of the film. So from there you just kind of he's just like this regular guy who's just trying to make settler, just trying to make his way out west.
See, what they really needed was to give him a sonic screwdriver. Then I would understand he was no, I'm kidding. But in actuality, like despite the fact that he is called Doc sometimes,
yeah.
They focused on him more as a frontiersman. The film is, again, it's about the Oregon Trail, and they're in a bunch of covered wagons, and they're crossing. And we'll get more to the plot in a bit, but his main goal is just to get to Oregon at the end of the trail. And he seems more the leader of the caravan than the actual leader. He seems the frontiersman. He's the one telling everyone what to do. He's the one who tells the young boy Danny, okay, well, you're too young to do this, but maybe you're the man of the wagon right now, so I'll let you shoot the gun as long as you don't shoot your eye out. He is the guy who tells people kind of what their place is in this caravan.
He's more like the overall caretaker, making sure everyone is being looked after, making sure everyone is being taken care of. Kind of like also the kind of like the advisor to the leader of the wagon train, so that way he gets like all the information to make sure that he knows what's going on, especially with the Indians coming. And
I like him. I like the actor more than the character, though. If they hadn't used him as a doctor, and they had tried to define him as this leader of sorts, and his goal was more pushing further westward, because they don't actually get very far in the film.
Yeah.
And the film doesn't really... It initially seems to be about the westward push to Oregon.
Yeah.
But it meanders, and we'll get to that. But if they had focused more on him as a leader, and I like him in the leader role, rather than him as a doctor, which kind of seems like a Deus Ex Machina, even though, yes, it is part of the film. They do reference it, they do talk it up, but it just feels like a Deus Ex Machina. We put him in this doctor role only so that he could save this boy at the end of the film.
So to make him like, the big, overall hero that he always is, because he's Davy Crockett.
Yeah.
I'm probably just going to keep calling him Davy Crockett throughout much of this podcast. I just know it.
And speaking of Davy Crockett, now, Eric was not here when we talked about Davy Crockett and the River Pirates, but Mike Fink is in this film. for those who don't know, in Davy Crockett and the River Pirates, Davy Crockett meets up with a rival. And he's king of the river, Mike Fink, and he hams it up, and he's awesome. The guy who played him, Jeff York, is also in this film, and he acts as Fess's right-hand man. He's the only person who really you recognize throughout the entire film, because there's a lot of small extras that don't really do much.
Yeah, even like the main female lead doesn't really do much either. Like, I mean, yeah, she's there, I think mostly to serve as the love interest for Fess Parker, but other than that, it's...
Much like in the original Davy Crockett, she's kind of there, but she's only there for like a minute, and her one major scene is telling Indians that they're not going to trade a person for safety. We'll get to that. But even then, she's just adding on to what Fess is doing in the scene.
Yeah, pretty much. Also, it's funny, you recognize one actor. The other actor that I actually recognized was Sebastian Cabot, who, for those of you who don't know who he is best known as the voice of Bagheera the Panther from the animated Jungle Book, not the live action, the animated one. And I recognized him, and I remember what he looked like because I saw a Twilight Zone episode with him, and I saw that, and I'm just like, oh, he's in this movie too. Oh, this should be interesting. Once again, going about how Disney tends to use a lot of their same actors for different movies. They do that quite a bit in the 50s, and they do more of it, especially when we get to the 60s.
Especially when we talk about, like, Mary Poppins and the guy who played Mr. Banks did a lot. And I cannot wait until we do Herbie, because I want to see him as a villain.
Oh, I've actually seen that one. That one's actually pretty good. He gets really into it. Can we do a podcast just on the whole life of David Tomlinson?
We could squeeze it in. This movie has a very interesting cast. So you have Davy Crockett with his right-hand man, Mike Fink. You have the woman who's barely even there, played by Kathleen Crowley. And she does a good job. She has a good voice, but she doesn't do much.
Yeah.
Like we said, Sebastian Cabot. And I really liked him in this role. He serves as a mediator between the Sioux Indians and the caravan. And I just love the way he conducts himself. He seems very knowledgeable. He seems like a fair guy. And he's not trying to play any side. He's just trying to make sure everyone's happy. Yeah,
and I like him. And he accentuates his French accent. But I mean, that's not what he actually sounds like in real life. He basically sounds like Bagheera in real life, like the way he talks in the Jungle Book. That's pretty much how he talks in real life. But here he kind of puts on like a little bit of a French accent, but it's not to the point where it's fake, but it's enough where it's like, oh, this guy is actually French. And I think he is a French-born actor, so I think that's probably why he can pull that off. But I do like his role. And another guy who I like listening to his voice. So it all works in the end.
Yeah, he definitely. I didn't pick up on the fact that he wasn't actually French, and I think that's a mark of a good actor, because I've played through Heavy Rain recently, and while some of the actors are very good, you can definitely tell that they're not you can definitely tell that they don't have the accents that their character has. So I think it was a great performance all around for the cast. Let's dive into this plot, or rather, 3 plots.
It's basically set up like Davy Crockett, where you have like 3 different storylines going on, like one right after the other. It looked like it could have been set up like as a miniseries, kind of like what Davy Crockett was, but this was an actual like full-out theatrical release, and I don't know if this film was was aired in television as like a 3-parter like Davy Crockett was, but it certainly felt like it.
I mean, from what I can gather right here, the box office, it was debuted as a theatrical film and grossed $2.75 million, which is pretty big. But the problem I have is with the structure.
Yeah.
Because with Davy Crockett, at least you knew when they were transitioning to different scenes because you had the Davy Crockett music. You had this driving force of, okay, we're going to this part now. And if you didn't like a certain part, you could always rewind and watch a different part of the film. Here, it has a very good opening.
Yes.
And then it gets boring very quickly. It has a very boring middle. And then it picks up again in the end. And that's not what you want in a film. The first part is them on the caravan, and they're attacked by Indians. And it turns out that these Indians are setting up a trap for them. They steal their horses after luring them away. And so this young boy named Dan and their crew is so upset by the fact that he lost his prize horse that he goes off and attacks the Indians by himself, and Fess has to go and save him. So it starts off really well done with this trap that the Indians pull, because they send a single arrow into the camp.
And I love how the single arrow went into the camp because the guy was talking about what was his name again?
That was Jeff York.
Jeff York, the Fink guy. So Jeff York is talking, to these kids about a lot, about this, that happened just like this on a night like this with the wagons. And I was looking out, and all of a sudden an arrow comes, and the arrow just like shoots right by him. And he's like, yeah, just like that. And he goes on for like 5 more seconds until you realize, holy crap, there's an arrow.
So, I
thought that was hilarious.
It is hilarious, and right off the bat, it does hook you in. And I thought this was a great start, an intriguing beginning. Okay, what's going on with the trail? Are they going to get attacked by Indians? And it turns out, even smarter is the fact that the single arrow is to lure them away, because they deduce that an attack would be a bunch of arrows. That would be an Indian attack, but there's something that they want them to see. So they go off and they find, was it a living body or a dead body?
It was a living body. At first we thought it was a dead body because, anybody gets shot in the arrow, you immediately think, oh, they're dead. But when Fess Parker walks over and he checks the body, he's like, no, this guy is still alive. He's still breathing. I mean, if he was dead, then it would have sent a different type of message. But here, the guy was actually still alive. I mean, I know for a fact that if you get impaled with an arrow, if you're still alive, you can still get the arrow out. There is a way to get it out, but at first we all think oh, he's dead because the stereotype, oh, if you're shot in the arrow, you're dead. But no, he was actually alive. So,
but what is interesting about this, and this person doesn't really actually appear again, but what's interesting is that the Indians use this as a diversion to steal their horses.
Yeah.
They take, I think it's either 3 or 4 Indians come up, they steal 5 of the prized horses, and one of them is Danny's. And Danny is the worst child actor I've seen in some time. And it is glorious. It is, I'm going to put a clip in of this. Behold the acting of Danny.
Dan, what is it? What's happening? The horses. That's what they were after all the time. 5 of the best. 1 whole picket string. But not Chieftain. Oh, Dan. Oh, are you all right? Why, sure.
He's played by David Stollery, and I don't think he's done anything in the past that I remember. I don't remember the name. But he is gloriously bad. But he's so upset by this that he goes by himself, like I said, to attack 4 Indians, armed with only a gun. So Fess Parker comes over. He's like, you dug yourself into this mess. I'll help you get your horse back. We're not getting the rest of the horses back. They're 5 Indians, you idiot. But I think it's also funny that he doesn't tell the kid that he shouldn't use the gun, and he doesn't really berate the kid. He's just like, it's a different time. The West, kids used guns. Nowadays, everyone would be like, whoa, a kid using a gun?
Yeah, I know. It was a different time. It was I mean, the whole thing with the Oregon Trail is that, whole families were going by wagon across the plains for like days, weeks at a time, just trying to get to Oregon. And some people didn't make it all the way. And a lot of people, they had to watch out for forces of nature, disease, Indians, Native Americans, that kind of thing. All these different hazards that was along the way, and they had to overcome all these different obstacles, and everyone needed to pitch in. So the idea of like, a kid having a gun, it's like, well, it's an extra at the time. It's like, well, it's an extra hand, to protect the family in case if there's any trouble.
So the basic gist is they get back the horse that was stolen, except for the other 4 horses, because they had to use a diversionary tactic. Basically, one of them was distracting the Indians, and then Danny was taking the horses.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the first act. It's started out really well, and then Danny came in, and and as much as I like Danny, I don't think it's a very strong end to the act. And I think it sets up one of the major problems I have with the film is that there are so many dangers on the Oregon Trail, but the only one that appears in each of these 3 acts is Indians.
Yes. Well, they have to have some sort of conflict. Well, some sort of conflict, but this is the main conflict, the whole, cavalry versus Indians, that kind of thing. And Indians have been used as an antagonist before in like the previous Davy Crockett films, so they're just kind of running off with that.
I just feel they could have, there are other Westerns that I've seen that, there are bandits, there are snakes, there are lions, well, probably not lions, but there are other dangers in the West. And I mean, while Indians are a major part of that, I think that having the main antagonist of each act being Indians was a bit of a misstep.
Yeah, I mean, they could have used like wolves at one point. Like they could have used that like between Act 2 and Act 3 when they're like right before they get to Fort Laramie, where like all of a sudden the wagon train gets attacked by wolves, and all of a sudden the friendly Sioux Indians come in and they save them and they escort them to Fort Laramie. See, I just made it better, made it more interesting.
Mm-hmm. And now we unfortunately have to talk about the boring second act. Now, on paper, this sounds awesome.
Yes.
An Indian kidnaps one of their crew.
Although I don't like the way how it was done, because like the kids, they're out, they're away from camp and they're playing, and all of a sudden Danny looks over and he sees the Indian tribe. And then he's like, no, go over, hide. And then he finally gets down. But it's what I found weird was as the Native Americans were coming up, Danny all of a sudden stands up as if he was like trying to confront them or greet them or something. I'm just like, wait, why
Danny is an idiot, and no, this isn't Danny. This is Denny from The Room.
Oh, hi, Native Americans.
Seriously, this guy's an idiot, and on paper, what would have worked so much better is, okay, they just come in, they don't even relate it to the horses from before. Like, you could have had, okay, the Indians, we got a score to settle. They come in, they kidnap Danny. No one cares about him. And, they kidnap Danny, and they have to go in and save him, and there's a big battle with the Indians. Mm-hmm. Here, it's executed really weirdly, because first of all, Danny escapes in a scene.
Mm-hmm.
They hold the tension for literally 5 minutes where the Indians are dancing around, and he's so stupid not to wait until they fall asleep. He unties himself and he runs away while the Indians are right there.
I know, he runs like right in plain view of the Native Americans as they're dancing. It's like, oh, they're too busy dancing, but you can clearly see there's like 2 or 3 of them that are just looking on. They're not even part of the dancing. And he just runs right in front of them. It's like, and they're like, he's getting away. I mean, it's like, of course they're going to see you.
I expected the wah-wah music to happen or something. It's like, if this was a comedy, and if this was going for comedy, I would find it hilarious. But, so he's chased by these Indians, and he climbs, like, this rock face.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most laugh-out-loud hilarious parts, because he kicks a rock, like a small rock, and then it hits another small rock, and then it turns into a landslide.
It turns into, like, a series of, like, small rocks. And they're not even, like, really big boulders. They're just, like, little small rocks that just keep tumbling down, and they're on this one guy, one Native American that he's climbing up. It's like, and he falls down to his death, and it's like, wait, what?
It was hilarious. It was like the boulder scene from The Sword and the Rose, which you didn't see. But it's like it's a horrible effect, and to compound that, the Wilhelm scream of the Native American is hilarious.
I was actually waiting for a Wilhelm scream to come up at some point, but did the Wilhelm scream exist yet at this point in time? I know it's like mid-50s, and like this was like right at the peak of like the Western film genre, like the golden age of Westerns.
I think it was actually earlier, because I know, from what I know of Wilhelm, and admittedly it's not very much, but he did black and white films, and this was in color. Now, then again, this could be a re-release of the film in color.
That is true.
So I don't know. I know Disney always touted color, and black and white was around a lot more than color, even now.
Yes.
But I'm not I don't know the technicality of this, but I'm going to say that Wilhelm might have been around.
Okay.
Audience, tell us if you know if the Wilhelm scream was around in 1956. 1956. Yeah. Let us know, because we would like to know.
Because I know it was right around this time at some point. Because like I heard like the first use of the Wilhelm scream was in this one Western, and I can't remember the exact title of it, but I just wanted to know if it did exist at that point.
Mm-hmm. So he gets back to camp because of this hilarious escape, and they realize, oh, the rest of the Indians are probably going to follow him back to the camp. So they probably won't survive on where they are. So they try to get to the place they call the Notch, and through this very long scene, they get to the Notch, daybreak, and a whole bunch of Indians are right there, and they get into this huge conflict. And on paper, this would be intense. I've seen in Stagecoach, the Indian encounters are always intense, always a big point of the film. But this doesn't work for a couple of reasons. Number one, this isn't the climax of the film.
No, this is just the middle. Like this whole sequence of the Indians going after the settlers, heading up to the high ground, and then eventually making their stand. This goes on for like what, a good 15, 20 minutes maybe?
I'm going to say 25 minutes, and that's
okay.
the second problem. They blew their wad too early, and they blew it for a long time, and it goes on, and yes, some of the stunts are incredible. Like I saw with Stagecoach, the people who do these stunts, you have to. It's incredibly dangerous. But the difference between this and Stagecoach is there's no stakes. I don't see any of the good characters get hurt.
Yeah, like most of the hurting actually went to like the Native American, to the Pawnee, where they keep just getting shot and falling off of their horses. And even though I felt like most of that whole sequence was just cutting back to the Pawnee riding horses, and that's what it kind of felt like. It was just going back to them riding the horses. But I mean, seriously, during that first part of this, during that whole much of that sequence, most of them is just them falling off of the horses from getting shot. I don't think you really see any of the good guys. Like, there was one point where I thought, oh, holy crap, where one of the Pawnee jumps from his horse onto one of the wagons, and he got.
It was a great stunt.
It was a great stunt, nonetheless. But I thought at that moment, I thought, oh, something's going to happen to them. But what happens? He just gets shot, falls down.
By Danny,
and he falls off. And it's almost like, wait, did he just get run over? Because that was my next thought. It's like, he falls down, he falls in right in between the wagon and the horses. I'm just like, oh, and he probably got run over.
And once again, the same stunt was done in Stagecoach, and there were stakes because a lot of the good guys died. And here, there's only one point where I saw someone might have gotten hit by a bullet because the Indians were like hanging off their horses, but they were still firing their guns, and he got grazed in the shoulder. That's the extent. And so it's this big, dumb action scene that does not understand how action scene is supposed to be handled, supposed to be framed. It doesn't understand that you don't overstay your welcome, and you have to have stakes.
Mm-hmm.
So it just got me so bored where I was just kind of like, is something happening? I check back in 5 minutes. Is this still going on?
After that stunt with the horse, after that stunt with the guy on the horses, it just kept cutting back to like them, to more Pawnee riding on horses, more of the wagons, back to the horse. It just kept going back and forth. It's just like, It's like,
and the Pawnee circling around, like they did this for a long time, like just circling around in the same circle, not trying to flank them, not trying to do anything really, and the end is just them running away into the dust because apparently the Indians don't understand how to flank an enemy.
Even though they probably know a lot more about how to flank an enemy because, they were the ones that adopted the whole guerrilla warfare and they know more of the land than the settlers do. But what I also found weird was that they, not only was it because the settlers were able to stand their ground, but because Fess Parker decided to have the idea of let's loose all of our horses as a distraction, and it'll just, shoot them up as they come. So apparently that works. And
instead of losing all your horses or having your horses being captured by the Indians and then just having them leave because they have your horses, you idiots.
Yeah, because they're kind of like riding off together. Like, it's like, yeah, they didn't get the settlers, but they got the horses. So it's like, okay.
Honestly, I'm pretty sure the Pawnee would be more interested in stealing their horses than killing the white man.
Yeah.
Because while there are aggressive Indians, think about it this way. Horses are a means of getting food. Mm-hmm. They're a means of obtaining buffalo. Horses are a high-priced commodity, especially back then and especially in the West.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving your horses to the Indians. If I had the choice between killing a white man who didn't really do anything and getting his horse, I would get his horse.
Yeah, I definitely get the horse. And even after the horse dies, they just use the horse hide for like clothes and stuff because like they don't waste the animal. They don't waste the animal. I mean, they probably wouldn't eat it because like it's not very tasty. But I mean, they'd use it for other things. So.
So that's the second act. It's big, it's dumb, it's long, and honestly, the film could have cut that entire sequence. In fact, I think the film would be better if it just went from the Indians stealing horses at the beginning to the third act and the juxtaposition between them. And then maybe led into a big fight scene if it was handled well. But it just, these things aren't paced well.
No. That's the thing. That whole middle just, it was just there for the excuse of just having an action scene in there because there's Indians and stuff. We have to have this big fight scene. We have to have this big fight scene. And, because there was quite a bunch of westerns that were doing some stuff, and all of a sudden, and so like we got to do this too. So let's do that.
Yeah, it's Disney. I like you, but you're not Stagecoach. Don't try to outdo Stagecoach, please. Thank you. But it does redeem itself a bit in the third act. Now, the third act starts off kind of boring because they reach this trading post, and basically it's run by the French guy who's the intermediary between the Indians and the white man. And for about 10 to 20 minutes, all that really happens is they are trading with the Indians. The not the Pawnee from the beginning, but the Sioux Indians. They introduce them as the peaceful tribe.
Whereas history dictates that they were actually one of the more they were the more savage of the tribes. Like they were more aggressive. Like they weren't they didn't take too kindly to strangers. But so yeah, Dances with Wolves lied to us.
Dances with Wolves did indeed lie to us. But then again, Dances with Wolves is a much better put together film than this. I have to say. So Sioux Indians, apparently they're friendly, but nothing really happens with them for the first, 10, 20 minutes, like I said. They're trading. The kids want the clothes that the Indians have. And we get a really hilarious interaction between the kids of the Indian tribe and the white man kids. They have these really, they have the funny toys, it's basically a string, and you put a circular device on a string, and you spin it around, and then you pull the string straight, and it goes from side to side. Basic toy. But what makes this hilarious is they add cartoon sound effects for the string pulling.
Yeah.
They have slide whistles.
I'm just like, huh? Wait, are they supposed to make that kind of noise? I don't.
Disney just jumped the shark.
Or they jumped the Goofy, or they've gone Goofy, haha. So, but yeah, I was just like, wait, I don't think that's how it works. I mean, there's like, it kind of looks like a yo-yo almost, like with the string, the circular thing. But then all of a sudden, like, they introduced themselves, and the Native American kid, like, they get into this, like, it's almost like this kind of like standing arm wrestling thing, and they like knock each other down, and everybody's like, oh, ha 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 ha. And then the Native American father's like, no, it's like, what are you kids doing? Get back here.
I also want to point out that the Indian kid, I think his name is Thunderbird.
Or Little Thunder, something
Little
like that.
Thunder. He's hilariously dubbed. He doesn't say... He sounds like he's 10 years older than he's supposed to be, and I don't think it was the same actor, because he's only in that one scene talking, and it's just... the design choices for this film, for how things are dubbed, and that's what made it hilarious for me. It just... Things you can definitely tell were out of place. But things sour quickly, or in 25 minutes, between the Indians and the white man, because they basically take a liking to this child that's in the white man group. They say she's good medicine or good luck. And many stars, the great medicine man of the Sioux, is saying, okay, well, the gods have told me that she will bring great luck to our tribe. Now, immediately, one of the guys is just like, no, why are you touching her? Because he's kind of an idiot, and he doesn't think to ask, okay, Frenchman, what's going on here? Instead, he's just like, no, I'm going to push you to the ground.
and the Native Americans like, no, like, and they're almost like ready to like scalp his head, and Sebastian Cabot is like, no. It's like, no, stop. And he stops it, and he's like great. It's like, great, now I got to go talk to the chief and, make sure everything is all okay and everything. And then I was like, it's like, ooh, there's tension going on.
Stupid white man, and it's always caused by the white man. But
yes,
here there was finally tension, finally something happening. So it got to a kind of a rough start. It was hilarious, but if you were watching it in the theaters at the time, I would think I would be bored up until like something started happening. So the chiefs of the two tribes, they call the chief of the white man tribe.
Yeah.
And I want to point out that this is George Reeves. This is the final big screen appearance of George Reeves. He's the he's basically the leader of the caravan. Even though Fess Parker acts like it, but you might know George Reeves as TV's Superman.
Yeah, the original Superman, the original TV Superman. And as I was looking up research for this film, I didn't know that this was his last feature film appearance, right before his untimely death. And I was like, oh, really? Because I think he did a few westerns prior. I mean, as well as like doing Superman, but like I think he's done a few westerns before in the past.
It would certainly make sense. He has that look about him. It's the beard. I didn't recognize him as Superman because I've seen Christopher Reeves.
Yes,
but I haven't seen George Reeves. So then again, I probably am not old enough to have seen George Reeves' appearances. George Reeves' last appearance, he is the leader of the caravan, and they speak with many stars and the leader of the Sioux. Now, they have their peace pipe, and the Sioux basically say, okay, we're going to ensure that you have safe passage to Oregon, or they call it Big Water, but I assume that means the
ocean.
The ocean. Because the only other explanation would be the Mississippi River, but
they're not going that way.
They're not going that way. So they say, we will lead you to Big Water, and we will give you items that will help you get there safely. The whistle that will show that you're protected by the Sioux tribe. We will give you 3 of our finest horses that will help you hunt. You will never grow hungry. And I think they offered them blankets too.
Yeah, they offer them blankets. They think, spiritually that it'll grant them, health, good health, and that they'll never ever get sick along the way. And they also give them like this whistle as like a symbol of the tribe, saying that when other tribes come, they know that they are friends of the Sioux.
So they're basically saying, with this, you're not going to get hungry, you're not going to get dysentery, and you're basically going to win the Oregon Trail game with all the characters. And that doesn't happen.
Yeah, really.
And I at first I'm just like, you know what, go take that offer. But they basically say, we want to trade you for the little girl because we think she's going to be good luck. And honestly, she has no father. I don't really see what the gripe is here. Yes, I know some people might see it as you're trading a human, but here's my argument of why they should have done it, more so than just surviving. She has no parents. The chief has guaranteed that he'll raise her as his own daughter, as a princess of the tribe, and she's not going to want for anything, and she's going to marry his son. Basically, she's not going to want for anything. She's going to be celebrated in the tribe. Like, it's kind of a win-win situation here.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that too, because, like, well, if she doesn't really have any parents, it's like, you know, what's the big deal? But then her big sister comes in and is like, no, I forbid any of this to happen, and you know, I don't want this because, you know, I'm her sister. And
which I think it was more a term of endearment than an actual blood relation. I mean, maybe over the course of the Oregon Trail, their parents died and she actually was a sister. It doesn't really say.
I know. I don't think they were entirely clear on that. I thought she was, like, blood sister, but regardless, like, she, you know, she's very much attached to the little girl, so it's like, no, I don't want any of this to happen. And so they reach an impasse. And the Sioux tribe are like, no, forget it. We're going to take all the stuff back. Forget it.
And now here's what kind of started throwing me off about the act. This part was really well handled up until one point. The Frenchman basically says, if you don't do this, the Sioux will attack you. They will go after you, and they will take down the entire caravan. This doesn't happen. In fact, it pretty much stalls the film because neither side wants to do this, and they're basically at an impasse. It's when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force. Like, just nothing happens for the next 5 minutes. And the next big scene is, and the thing that actually starts things happening again, Little Thunder falls off his horse and is hurt. And it takes that to move the plot along, and I'm just like, you know what could have moved the plot along? Have the Sioux attack them. In the attack, Little Thunder is hurt, and the white man offers to help. Here, Little Thunder just falls off his horse during a game, and Fess Parker wants to help. But they don't let him, and apparently the chief is like, I can claim your scalp at any time because you touched my son, which is kind of weird because they touched the daughter, and that's what set off things with the white man. It's like, do people not like other people touching their family members in this film?
They don't like being all touchy-feely. They're just like, no. It's like, no.
I have a personal bubble this big. So, you know, the Sioux do their best to help Little Thunder. Nothing works. And Fess walks into certain danger. He offers to help many stars. You know, the reasoning is 2 medicine is better than 1 medicine. And he basically tries to trick them by saying, okay, well, your medicine obviously brought me here, so please let us help. You know, he basically manipulating them in a good way, trying to make them help each other.
Yeah, they basically said that, you know, you called upon your gods, you know, for help, and this is the help that they're bringing you. So take our help. And I like how they worded that. It's like you called for our gods and they sent you this. So take advantage of this.
Mm-hmm. And I thought that was very well handled. And so they got together. He finds out, that the clavicle bone was broken on the boy, and he saves him because he's a doctor. And one of the things I like about this scene was he's about to operate, and the chief is like, I don't want this. And he hands his knife to the chief, and he motions to himself with a stabbing motion, saying, if something happens, you can kill me.
Yeah, and I like that, where it's like, all right, here's my other knife. Mm-hmm. If anything were to happen, you have every right to kill me. So then he starts operating on him, and then they elapse the time over, and he patches him up, and then he wakes up, and everything is okay. And then at the very end, the chieftain gives him back the knife. Mm-hmm. And as a way, of thank you and for their appreciation.
And so, because they're so grateful for them saving Little Thunder, they give all the items back, and they physically walk them over to the passage to Big Water. They say, we'll lead you there ourselves. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a great ending. I thought, there were some parts that were kind of lacking in Act 3. I think that's probably the best.
Yeah, that is probably the best, because, it starts off, like, they're just, at first it's like, they're all happy, they're all just getting along, and then all of a sudden something happens. Some minor thing happens that causes a lot of stir between the two, a lot of tension, and then a major event happens where, it's like, our son is hurt, and one guy's offered to help, and they're like, no, because, they don't like each other. So, but then they finally, realize, this person can actually help, can actually save this kid's life, and they eventually do get involved. They eventually do let him do it, and everything, it all just, ties itself up all in the end, that kind of thing.
If I were making this film, I would have cut out the entire middle section. I would have just had the bit about the horses leading to them getting to the fort, and I think that would have juxtaposed nicely. Take Danny out of the film.
Or if you have to keep Danny in the film, get a better actor.
Yeah. Once again, here's his acting.
Oh, Dan. Oh, are you all right? Why, sure.
So, that's the plot. It's poorly paced. It has really good start, really good end, a lot of hilarious bits in the middle, and a boring action scene. So it's a bit of a mess. It's a mixed bag. Like, I want to like it, but at the same time, it shoots itself in the foot. Now, I think a good thing to talk about here is the songs, and they're spread throughout the film as kind of bookends. We start off with the titular song of the film, Westward Ho, the Wagons. And this actually really started to get me engrossed in the film, almost as much as the opening story after the song. It's a really great song. It's a pioneer song, basically. It was lyrics by Tom Blackburn and music by George Bruns. And I don't know if they did anything else in Disney lineup, but they did a lot of the soundtrack here. And it definitely has that Westward feel of the pioneer. It feels like you're in Pioneer Land, Disney World.
Mm. Yes, it does. I really do like the opening song for Westward Ho. It drags it brings you right into it, and and that's one thing Disney always does well, is like they know how to do a good song, and they know exactly how to get people into it. And with some of the people that did the song, George Bruns is a name that I do remember a lot, because he did a lot of the Disney stuff, like music for Disney. like the actual scores and whatnot for I think from like this time period, from like the 50s into the 60s, like a lot of the stuff, like when we start doing a lot more of the animated stuff, like when we do like, you know, like 101 Dalmatians, Sword in the Stone, stuff like that, you're going to see his name come up a lot because he did a lot of the musical scores for those films. Mm-hmm. And his music is actually really good. Mm-hmm. Like he's kind of like the I don't want to say the John Williams of that specific era of that golden age of Disney, but I might be exaggerating a bit. But his music is pretty good.
Like I said, it definitely has that adventurous feel to it. And I think that was a great opening piece. Then we have the Ballad of John Colter, and I think this was sung by Fess Parker.
Yes.
One of two songs that he sung, and it's basically when they get the horses back and they're all around the fire and they're singing a song, and it's really well sung. It's a good song, but it's not memorable enough, and I think that's a big problem with it. Is it's kind of there.
Yeah, not as memorable as when Fess Parker did that one song near the end of Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier, but it was nice for what it was.
It was a nice filler. Mm-hmm. You can definitely tell it was filler, and I think it was talking about the Indians and their chief. Mm-hmm. But I think what really sold it was Fess Parker.
Yes.
On its own, it's a nice song. It has that trappings of the 50s where it doesn't stand out as much.
Yeah.
Now, it says here that the next one is Wrangle Wrangle, and I have no idea what that song is because I don't remember it in the film.
That might have been... I'm trying to remember where that was. That could have been... I want to say that could have been... I don't know if it was the square dance or if it was or one of the Native American bits. I'm not too sure.
I'm going to guess it's the square dance because that's the only thing I can remember that was musical that didn't have, I liked the square dance sequence. I thought it was fun, but it's lots of filler.
It's just there. It's just background music.
Mm-hmm. The next big one is I'm Lonely, My Darlin', and this lyrics by Fess Parker and musical arrangement by George Bruns again. It's Fess Parker singing this, and he does a great job. This is my favorite song of the film.
I was going to say, this was cute. I like this one, because, he's singing this, to swoo his lady interest, and it was a nice little song. It was actually adapted from another song, Lilies from the Green or something like that. I forgot the name of the actual song.
Green Grow the Lilacs.
Green Grow the Lilacs, thank you. Mm-hmm. It's adapted, he adapted it from that song, and it's a cute little love song, and I like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's probably not the best song in the film, but I think it's my favorite because it just shows why Fess Parker is a good singer. Mm-hmm. In no other parts, besides maybe the Ballad of John Colter, do we really get to truly see him as the crooner he was. Mm-hmm. And he's not squinting, he's not in his character, he's basically seducing someone, and through song, and he proves that he's a great singer here. And the fact that he adapted it, this is his song, and then the person he's trying to woo actually gets a line in there. But I think this is Fess Parker's song in the film, and I think this was what really it was leading up to for him.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, definitely, and this was the big Fess Parker song, and it really shows. And this is probably one of the more memorable songs, apart from Westward Ho, the Wagons.
Yeah, I mean the music in this film is good. It's just some of the middle stuff isn't memorable. It's good, it's just not memorable. It doesn't have that sticking factor.
Yeah.
I can remember some of the lyrics of I'm Lonely, My Darling.
Yes.
And then we end on Pioneer's Prayer, and it says it's from the Vanishing Prairie. Now, I didn't really recognize it. It did sound familiar, but I didn't, remember much of it. Then again, it's been forever since we saw the Vanishing Prairie on the last one. Kat and I watched it a long time ago. So, other than the songs, I think the other big thing to talk about is the production values of the film. We mentioned it briefly, but there are quite a few scenes where you can't see what's happening during the nighttime.
Yeah, especially with that. There are some parts of it where it has that obvious day for night shot, where they have like that dark filter over the lens to make it look like it's night, but they actually kind of shoot it during the day, because you could definitely see like light patches in certain spots, like especially like near the trees, where just so you could see him. But I think maybe it's also because of the quality of the film that we have, where it's kind of darker in some spots, especially with Dan's chase scene by the Native Americans at night.
Yeah, the chase scene was kind of hard to see stuff. And I don't know if it's the quality of the film or the way it was filmed. It is something to mention, though. With that, what is your final thoughts of Westward Ho, the Wagons?
Well, when I first saw it, it definitely reminded me immediately of Davy Crockett, and especially with Fess Parker, I'm like, oh, it's Davy Crockett. But from here, it just definitely, it's not just from Fess Parker's acting that it feels like Davy Crockett. It's more like how the entire film is laid out. How the entire film is basically like 3 different stories going on, and kind of almost trying to recapture that same feel that Davy Crockett has, but it doesn't doesn't work here very well. And what you're left with is you have 2 good stories. Like the third act was actually the best one, and you have this middle right in between where it was just there, where you kind of can tell they spend a lot of their budget on that whole action sequence with all the horses and the wagons and that whole bit of them just running around chasing after each other. And I mean, it's a lot of padding, but once you get to the third act, then the film starts to become interesting again. If you were to watch this, watch the first part with Danny and the horses, but then when you get to the second part with that whole action sequence, do your best to try and skip it. If you want to watch it, you can, but I would skip over most of that part until they get to Fort Laramie and the rest of the film.
It definitely does feel similar to the first Davy Crockett film, where I kind of felt a little bit of the way I do here, where the stuff with Davy Crockett in the politics stuff in the middle, like the second act, was not as interesting as the first one. But I think Fess Parker and his character really sold you through it. You're like, okay, Davy Crockett's doing politics. I'm on for the ride. Here, it's incompetence that's the problem. It's not a well-made action scene. It ignores a lot of the things that action scenes should do, and for something that happens in the very middle of the film rather than the climax, it tries to do too much, and it doesn't understand how to do it. Overall, I really want to like this film. It has a lot of so bad it's good elements, and it has a lot of actually really well-made elements, but they're kind of smack dab in the middle of boring. So if I were you, first thing I would do is watch the first 2 Davy Crockett films, because they're really good. And then view this as a third Davy Crockett film. Watch the first act, then immediately go to the third act, and there you go. Now, I think only probably the hardcore Disney fan will track this down, because they probably won't know this exists.
But surprisingly, it's actually available. Like it's actually available on like Disney's YouTube channel on demand. Like you can actually find it digitally on a lot of places, believe it or not. So it's actually quite easy to find, believe it or not, for something that's, just stranded in the Disney vaults.
Yeah, it's something that could use with updating. I wouldn't mind seeing it as a special feature on a Blu-ray of something. Like I said, I have my own copy of this that's probably not as good as the YouTube one. But I would really like to actually own this on DVD or Blu-ray. I think just for Danny and for the hilarious dubbing and just some of those sequences, because I would totally replay that yo-yo sequence just over and over.
Do you think they should remake this? Does it deserve a remake? Does it need to be a remake to this one?
I think they should, but the problem is with a remake, they wouldn't want to do it in the same style.
No.
They would have to do it as an actual film, and I think I would like more of a coherent driving narrative, because there's not really a narrative to speak of. Things happen.
Yeah.
A lot of things happen, but there's no driving narrative. And I think that's, that was more acceptable back then. Especially with what they were going for with the other, Davy Crockett films. But if they were to make it now, they'd have to have a driving narrative. They would have to find someone who could fill the shoes of Fess Parker and Mike Fink. And I would definitely make it more of a, more about the Oregon Trail, more about the westward push. Get the Coen brothers on that. They did a great job with their last Western. I forget the name of it. True Grit.
Yes.
True Grit was,
that was
amazing. And I think the remake is actually better than the original. So get the Coen brothers, do a True Grit with Westward Ho. I'd buy it.
Oh, yeah.
And
play some Oregon Trail, because that's fun, too.
We need an Oregon Trail, the movie, like the Battleship.
I was actually thinking that when I was watching this movie. I'm just like, this could have just been Oregon Trail, the movie. And I'm like, why isn't there a movie like this? I know there was like a fake trailer on YouTube, like somebody did like a fake trailer for like Oregon Trail, like, based off of like video game movies and stuff like that.
Did you see the Tetris trailer? Like, I think that would be something like that with the Oregon Trail.
No. I've seen the Pac-Man trailer, though.
So that was Westward Ho, the Wagons. It is worth a look, but only if you're not paying too much money for it. Next time, we have something called Johnny Tremaine.
Oh, yes, the Revolutionary War kid. That's
so we're delving through a lot of history in the 50s. Disney really liked their history.
Oh, yeah, they did quite a bit of history stuff in the 50s.
Just for note, Westward Ho! The Wagons is also based on a book called Children of the Covered Wagons by Mary Jane Carr. And there are only... so far in this time period, the only films that were not based on books were the documentaries, which, that's understandable, and The Littlest Outlaw. So, The Littlest Outlaw was way worse than this film. So, there you go. Disney, stick to what you know.
Yes. Which appears to be the West, and frontiersman stuff.
With that said, this has been the Disney Debate. This was a fun film to riff on, to watch. I can't wait for next week. Thank you for joining me, Eric Stoller.
Thank you.
I'm Zenith Rule.
I'm Y2Staller.
And we will see you guys next time.
Till then, Westward Ho! The Wagons.
The Wagons.
Thank you for watching the Media Meltdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, show your support on the Patreon page at patreon.com/Media Meltdown. See you all next time on the Media Meltdown.